What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for a match review as Spurs lost 2-0 at Old Trafford against Manchester United last night in what was an extremely poor performance. And I'm going to go even as far to say as our poorest performance under Antonio Conte. And it was a bit of a throwback to maybe even Nuno football as well. I mean, it was absolutely shocking last night.
It's not a throwback you want.
No, it's
Throwback.
not. It's really not. And look, I think that it wasn't. I think the first 10 minutes we came out and it looked like, we were going to have a good performance. But after that, we were terrible, literally terrible. We were under the cosh for 80 minutes. We got completely dominated. Mistakes were happening time and time again out the back, time and time again in midfield. We couldn't hold on to the ball for more than 2 passes. Romero, Dyer and Davis were putting in shit shows at the back. I mean, especially Romero and Dyer. I mean, I don't understand it because the ball just kept bouncing over them. The passes that they were playing into midfield were going back to Manchester United every time. Every time Højbjerg and Bentancur got the ball in midfield, Højbjerg was getting tackled. Bentancur was playing these blind passes into the Man United midfield. I mean, it was just all wrong yesterday. Everyone seemed to be just completely off it yesterday, and I just don't know what it is. And it's like every time, not every time, but the majority of times we've played away this season, it's been terrible displays. When you look at the Chelsea game, you look at the West Ham game, you look at the Sporting Lisbon game, and now you look at this and the Arsenal game, and now this Manchester United game. I mean, it's happening time and time again, but this one was the worst of the lot.
Yeah, and I think you have to give Man United credit. I actually think they played really well. Their pressing game has definitely improved from earlier in the season. They're definitely doing it in a much better structural way. They're getting a lot closer to the opposition, especially when they had Fred and Casemiro together. That was definitely, for me, Casemiro's best performance, it looked like, for Man United in a Man United
and
shirt.
Probably one of Varane's best performances as well.
For Varane and Martinez, I agree.
Martinez was brilliant.
Both
Martinez
of them
pocketed Kane and Son. I mean, both of them. I mean, they couldn't get a sniff out of him. They really couldn't.
Yeah, they were both completely dominant. The only joy we were kind of getting at Man United was on the wide areas, especially in the early exchanges. And we did a couple of times, Perisic and Doherty isolating the wing-backs of the full-backs of Man United, especially early on. Perisic was finding all kinds of space, but we just didn't make the most of it. Perisic was trying to take on Dalot, wasn't getting any spare change out of him. Doherty didn't even attempt to take anyone on. He just wasn't getting the crosses in. He decided to be a bit conservative and play it back most of the time, albeit he was taking up good positions. And when we weren't making the most of those opportunities in the wide areas, we were trying to play it in the centre. I think we were trying to play our way through Man United with the midfield three, which we changed up to a 3-5-2. And unfortunately, however good Højbjerg, Bentancur and Bissouma are, and I do think they're 3 very good players, are they elite players on the ball? Probably not. And when you're coming up against the quality of Fred and Casemiro, being aggressive against you and trying to win the ball back, they're not good enough to keep the ball from them. And it kept coming back. They weren't able to hold the ball. They weren't able to get past them. You need to be when you're talking about especially Casemiro, he's a top level central defensive midfielder. You literally need to be an elite centre mid on the ball to be able to get past him, and we don't have that, and that's a big issue.
Yeah, but I get that. I completely agree in what you're saying, but a lot of the mistakes last night were coming not even under any pressure. I mean, Højbjerg, how many times did the ball go into Højbjerg in midfield and he would just miscontrol it, the ball would bounce off him, he would play a terrible pass. I mean, it happened time and time again when he wasn't even under pressure. Romero as well, passing out the back. He was just passing it, blind passes, straight into the Man United midfield, straight to the Man United attack, not even under pressure. And it's not good enough.
I disagree. I thought they put us under a lot of pressure.
No, they did. They
did
put us under a lot of pressure. But a lot of the mistakes that we were making did come from us not being even pressured. A lot of the mistakes came from just stupid passes in the middle, not controlling the ball, not taking enough care of the ball. Yes, United did really well in pressing us from the front and stuff like that. But a lot of our mistakes came when we weren't even pressured.
That goes to the quality of the players. I think I disagree. I think majority came when they were pressured. I think the minority were coming under no pressure. I think majority of the mistakes were being forced by Man United, and impressively so. And they asked a lot of questions of us, and we didn't have the answers to them. I think there was two phases of the game the two main phases which we really struggled when we were trying to play out the back, and Man United were really pressing us really high. They were finding it very easy to win the ball back off us. We very rarely were able to break their press and break the ball into space. And when we did break into space, we didn't exploit it. And when there were periods of the game, which there were, where we were having a bit of possession, there was zero creativity from the midfield, which I think who were getting a lot of the possession. I mean, we tried to break forward using some powerful running, using our physicality, but when it came to trying to pick the lock, you getting Kane and Son involved in trying to break Man United down, getting crosses from wide areas, getting Højbjerg and Bentancur further forward. They were lacking in quality, and Fred and Casemiro and even Bruno were finding it very easy to win the ball back off them. And when they were trying to hold the ball off these players, it became very, very difficult for them to retain the ball, and they didn't have the ability to turn away, be on the front foot, try and beat a man, even have creative passing in between the lines. That wasn't there from their midfield three. And unfortunately, I think when it comes to these midfield threes, however good they are, and I like them, I really do. I think I really like our midfield players. They're just not in that elite bracket when it comes to being on the ball, and that's just a matter of reality we have to live with. And that's what we needed. For me, one of the players we needed in the summer is someone who's this is why I wanted someone like a Neves or someone like that in the centre, or a Maddison, someone who's has quality on the ball, who can pick out really progressive quality passes, or is very good up against these very good central midfielders. Because it's all well and good Højbjerg and Bentancur being good against I mean, it is good, and it's not easy to find people like people as good as Bentancur and Højbjerg when we coming up against maybe a lot of the other teams in the Premier League, and they can be go toe to toe with them on the ball. But when you're coming up against people like Casemiro, they don't have the quality to take them on and be dominant, and that's just reality. And until we're improving the quality on the ball, I can see similar problems when teams as good as Man United, with teams who have as good players as Man United, press us really high in a good structural way, then we're going to come up against problems, especially away from home. And I think that's what we saw against Man United.
It is what we saw, but I still think it's pretty unforgivable. Well, not unforgivable, but I think that some of the performances from the majority of the players last night was nowhere near good enough. Even when you're talking about the gulf in quality on the ball and stuff like that, stuff I saw from the players on that pitch last night was nowhere near good enough. And I don't know what it was down to. Was it down to tired legs, or I don't think it was down to effort or anything like that. I don't know what it was down to, but they looked so tired yesterday on the pitch, especially Højbjerg, some of those lazy touches he was doing, Romero as well. And it was just so hard to watch. It really was. And, when you're looking at a team yesterday, when your best player by far is Hugo Lloris, I mean, how many saves did he make yesterday?
10 saves.
Hugo was unbelievable, some of the saves he was making. I mean, it all started with a shot coming in where he should have caught it and it went out for a corner, and everyone's like, oh, is Hugo going to have another one of these days? But ended up being our best player hands down by a mile.
Yeah.
And I don't think any one of those players can come out from that game with their heads held high, because I think every single one of them, apart from Lloris, was so poor last night. They really were. Yeah,
and I think I agree. I think in these kind of games, when you go away to a team like Man United, you have to be perfect on the day to get the win and get the result. And you need to be on your game. You need to be sharp. You need to make not only do you have to be you have to be, making sure, as you say, taking care of the ball, making sure your passes are accurate and quick and decisive. But you also need to be brave. You need to be taking the ball when a player is on you and making sure you're on the half turn and being able to beat them. You need to make sure that when the pass is on, for example, when they're cut on the very few occasions that we were able to get Son in on goal, the pass just wasn't there, and the pass just wasn't accurate. and you need to make sure that you're making the right runs, you're getting in the right positions, you're being brave on the ball, you're having a bit of risk. And I think in all those facets we failed yesterday.
I felt like in the early stages when we were kind of looking like we were going to do something, we found Perisic and Doherty in good positions, right, on the left and the right. Kane was spraying some really nice balls out there, but I felt like...
And Bentancur as well was
was really involved in the first 10-15 minutes, but I felt like when they were spraying the ball out to Perisic, Sonny was making these really good runs in behind, and we failed to find him. And if Kane or Bentancur played those balls in behind instead of trying to find Perisic to get that ball into the box again, I felt we would have found a bit more joy, and it could have been a bit of a different game.
I hear that. I think that was the game. I think that was purposeful. I think Son made those runs to open up the space for the wide areas, and that's why our wide that was so free. And I think it was that we kept feeding the wide areas because that's where we were getting most joy. And I think if we were to go central at those times, then I think Son might have been crowded out. That's why we went out wide where the space was. But they weren't making the most of those opportunities. Perisic, I mean, it's a very low bar. He was probably our most dangerous player going forward, only because he was able to get some crosses in and try and make something happen. That's more than any other player was doing. Albeit his crossing, I still thought it was okay, but it wasn't up to his usual standard for sure. And he still wasn't
even have
really
enough men in the box anyway for these crosses.
And he still wasn't able to really hurt Man United at all. But that's only, okay, maybe you could say Kane was our most dangerous because he had a couple of shots, didn't he, which forced De Gea, made him make a couple of saves. But we really just didn't ask enough questions of Man United going forward, and we allowed them way too much control with the talent that they have in terms of out of the box, which we marked on before the game. We had Anthony hitting the post from outside the box, Bruno forcing Hugo into a couple of saves, and then Fred got the deflection and it went in the back of the net, and then they scored pretty much as well on the edge of the area from Bruno with a brilliant finish. And that's what happens when which I don't understand, when we have three centre mids in those positions. Why are they getting so many opportunities in the central areas to be able to get shots in on goal? Those are the things which I was very disappointed in defensively. Why we weren't able to restrict Man United as much as we were, or maybe you could say. We were restricting them from outside the box shots, and they were just too good at them, and that goes to their quality, and you have to give them credit for that.
But you know the quality that they have, you have to restrict them from shooting from that far out, because eventually one's going to go in. I mean, we said it in the preview, didn't we? Like, as much as we have restricted teams in the past, like a Wolves and these kind of teams, to just pop shots from 30, 25 yards, you can't do that against Man United and teams with real quality in the midfield, because they will hurt you.
And maybe that's where it comes unstuck, this way of playing, and that's why maybe we're getting joy against lesser teams, but when we come up against real quality, that's where we're getting unstuck.
Some of the defending yesterday from Romero, from Dyer, from Davis was absolutely shocking. Really was. I mean, haven't seen that defending from Dyer on a 90-minute basis like that for a while now.
Yeah, he struggled against Rashford.
He really did.
Rashford's pace was really hurting Eric Dyer, and he was there. And what was really disappointing for Eric Dyer was the amount of times they went long to Rashford, and it wasn't necessarily that Rashford was winning every duel, but Dyer seemed like he was struggling to dominate Rashford in the air, and that should never be the case. When Dyer is a big physical centre back who's good in the air, he should be winning that every single time. But it seemed like the fact that Rashford was even making it a duel or making it hard for him was something that Dyer should be disappointed in, because he should be dominating. And then obviously there were occasions where they were just going long over the top, and Rashford was getting in behind, and it was causing us a lot of trouble. And that's disappointing when you had that three at the back and you were supposed to be keeping it compact, and we weren't able to do that. I guess yesterday the biggest disappointment, obviously, look, the fact that we weren't able to really hurt Man United going forward was a massive disappointment, and it was hard to watch, because even when we were able to weather the storm, we weren't able to counterpunch them, and that was one of the biggest disappointments. But the fact that we were under the cosh for so much of the game, and we weren't able to defend as aggressively and get as close to Man United with the three in the middle as we should have, was a massive disappointment. And the fact that Hugo had to make so many saves, the fact they had 29 shots throughout the game. Let's look at the stats. Bring on the stats for a sec. Look at that, 28 shots throughout the game with 52 possession.
Most of any team this season.
Most we've conceded this season. Most of any team. They had in the first half 19 efforts on goal. albeit 13 of them were outside the box. Still, 29 shots is not acceptable at this level, especially where we want to be. And I know Conte's talking about patience, and we know we still need time, and I agree with that. But still, just from what we've seen from Tottenham, like even under Conte, we've seen a much better level of performance than, like, for example, I can understand giving the team a lot of possession and stuff. Like for example, went to Anfield last season. Like Liverpool had so much possession, and they had in and around the area, and they were putting us under a lot of pressure. But they didn't create so many chances. They didn't even have that many shots outside the box because we were pressing, we were defending aggressively, we were getting closer to them, and we were actually counterpunching. But yesterday was just very different.
That's what I was alluding to before. Why I'm saying I didn't understand why we were actually so bad yesterday, because we've seen us against top quality opposition before do a lot better than we did yesterday. The Man City game last year, the Liverpool game last year. We've seen it quite a few times under Antonio Conte. So I don't know if it's a question just of quality. There must be something else in there yesterday, because every single player was dreadful.
I think it's a bit of both. It was quality, and they had an off day. So I'm saying even when they're at their absolute best, Bentancur, Højbjerg and Bissouma, maybe not so much Bissouma, but especially Bentancur and Højbjerg, even when they're at their very best, they're going to find it very, very difficult to get past Casemiro and Fred and get the better of them, like from an offensive standpoint, right? And hold the ball off them and keep the ball away from them. So when they're having an off day, imagine how bad that's going to look. And that's pretty much what happened yesterday, in my opinion. So not only were they lacking quality, they were also not having a good day. So it led to an absolutely diabolical performance. You can, even if they're at their best, they can still, Fred and Casemiro can still get the better of you, but it'll probably be a closer game. They'll probably only win 1-0, maybe get only a few shots. But yesterday, Casemiro and Fred were having a brilliant day. Højbjerg and Bentancur were having a really poor day, and it led to an absolute complete domination where we were absolutely battered. And that's what happened.
And 2-0 was so kind to us, wasn't it?
Really kind.
Could have been a lot more last night at Old Trafford.
If it wasn't for Hugo pretty much kept the score down.
I know. That brilliant save from that Shaw shot, a few pop shots from outside the box. I mean, there was one from range, from close range from Rashford in the second half.
There were two brilliant ones from Rashford.
2 in the second half from Rashford. So, I mean, Hugo was hands down our man of the match yesterday. I thought Perisic was struggling massively with Anthony yesterday. I mean, he was tearing him a new one, especially in that first half.
Especially when he was cutting inside, it was very difficult for Perisic. He
couldn't handle him at all.
There was that clip going around where Perisic, and here there was Perisic and Højbjerg both on him, and he just goes round the outside of Perisic and he does a sliding challenge. It's nowhere near him, and all of a sudden he's on the run again. Anthony was definitely a big danger. Obviously hit the post from 25 yards as well. He was giving our backline no end of problems. You can see he's younger, he's fresher, he's sharper, and that's when Perisic comes up against these wingers. Clearly he can be struggling. The thing about Perisic is, I think the game plan is he's so far forward. Hopefully it pins the opposition winger a bit backwards, and if it's not pinning him back, he can exploit it. The problem was he was so far forward a lot, and in the first half we were actually finding him in good positions. But if he's not exploiting those positions when he's getting in the area, all of a sudden he can be a bit of a liability, because then Anthony can if Anthony's taking him on, he can get the better of him. The benefit of that is that Perisic should find space in the opposition half, and then he can do his stuff and find crosses and hurt the opposition, but he didn't do that, and that was a big problem.
Do you think that maybe Conte made a bit of a mistake not starting Sessegnon and starting Perisic yesterday?
I mean, maybe. I don't think it would have made a massive difference. I don't think that was
because maybe Sessegnon would have stood up to Anthony a bit better than Perisic did.
Yeah, I think maybe, maybe he would have, but I don't think that would have helped. It would have helped a bit. I don't think it would have helped massively. Maybe it would have made a mistake. Maybe made a bit of a mistake, because defensively it could have helped. But then again, would Sessegnon have done more than Perisic going forward? You can argue potentially, but I don't know. I think Perisic was actually getting in the right position. So from that point of view, Conte, I think, offensively, he was doing what Conte wanted him to do. I just think he wasn't making the most of the opportunities he was getting, and that was a big disappointment. But usually Perisic is pretty good in those situations. So if he comes up, maybe if it's in a different game, it would have been a different story. But yesterday it just wasn't working.
But again, we weren't even getting enough men in the box for him to find anyway when he was getting in those positions. So it was very difficult. In terms of Antonio Conte, a lot has been said over the last few hours or since the game has finished.
I've seen a Twitter account called Conte Out, it's called.
Well, yeah. Well, I haven't seen that, but that's crazy. Absolutely crazy talk. Obviously, a lot of people the whole season have been speaking about the style of football that we're playing. When you're winning, it's not too much of a problem. When results and performances happen like that, it's going to get highlighted a bit more. A lot of people talking about his substitutions and how late it takes for him to make those substitutions, especially when we're getting absolutely pummeled like we did yesterday. How much of the blame do you put on Antonio for yesterday?
He has to take a large bit of responsibility. I don't think he's responsible totally for some of the sloppiness and maybe the level of where we were at. I think he definitely has to take responsibility for how we were set up and how we were how Man United were allowed to get so many shots off, and how we were under so much pressure, and how we weren't able to hurt Man United for large parts of the game. I think what he has to take responsibility for is when we had possession of the ball and Man United were actually defending, the fact that we weren't able to create anything and we would look so toothless. I think he has to take responsibility for that. What he doesn't necessarily have to take responsibility for was the fact that individual duels, they were getting the better, sloppiness when playing out from the back, all these kind of stuff. You can only do so much about it. But I do think there are elements of the game where we weren't able to hurt Man United anywhere near enough, and we weren't able to contain them, where tactically we were suffering. And I think for sure he has to take responsibility for that. Why he waited so long to make a sub, he said that it's because, he essentially said he didn't really trust him on the bench. That's what essentially he said. I can't remember his exact phrasing, but I'm paraphrasing it. But he kind of said he didn't even think about making a sub, even when things were going so badly. And I think that's a bit disappointing, because clearly for large parts of the game it wasn't working. We needed a change, even just to bring on some energy. We needed something, and he waited till 10 minutes to go to make a change when the game was done. So that's disappointing.
Do you accept that excuse from Conte saying that he didn't feel like he needed to make a sub, or what you're saying is he didn't trust the players on the bench when you've got players like Lucas on the bench?
How do I know it wouldn't have got worse? I don't know. How do I know? I don't know. So what can I say? I have to accept it. He's the one on the training pitch. I trust him to make. We trust Conte to make the decisions, don't we? He's the elite football manager. If he says that it wouldn't have gone any better making a sub, it's hard to take. But that's what he's pretty much saying. If without Richarlison and Kulusevski, he doesn't really believe anyone would have changed the game. So I can kind of understand it, because we had Lucas, we had Hill, but are they really gonna massively change it? But then again,
when it's going so bad, why not just try it?
Why not try it? I agree with you. I would have personally liked to see him try, just go to a 3-4-3 for the last half an hour, even just before the 2-0, and see if you can make something happen and put United under a bit of pressure. But he didn't do it. Maybe he felt like if we went to a 3-4-3, because they were creating so many chances anyway, maybe he felt like he just would have been 4 or 5, or it could have been embarrassing maybe if we would have gone to a 3-4-3. Maybe that's what he felt. I don't know. But it would have been nice just to try and have a go, but he didn't. I just think it's a representation, probably. Look, we've clearly, this isn't the best we can play away from home. We've had much better performances against the top 6 side away from home. So I'm not going to say yesterday was the level we're at, but also you got to respect the quality of the opposition. You got to respect that they have very good players and they all having very good games, and they're clearly a tough team to play against away from home, having beaten Man United and Arsenal. Having beaten Liverpool and Arsenal already at home. So clearly it's not an easy place to go. And you also got to respect that, look, we had an off day, and that's hard to take, but it happens sometimes. And when you're playing against quality, you can't afford to have an off day, and that's what can happen. And it was an embarrassing performance. We were absolutely battered. But in the bigger picture of things, in terms of the whole season, the fact of the matter is, when people talk about our struggles away at big 6 teams and stuff like that, and look, these are true. We're struggling big time in these games. Let's no doubt about it. Chelsea, we got battered and got lucky. Arsenal, we lost. We got battered. To be honest, especially in the second half, maybe we're in the game a bit in the first half. The second half, we lost convincingly, and then we got battered. Now Man United, but these are obviously the toughest games you're going to face.
I know we got a result in the last minute. Got an equaliser against the run of play, but we were battered in that game pretty much.
I said that we got battered.
Lisbon too.
I wouldn't say we got battered at Sporting.
We deserve to lose.
I disagree.
What?
that we lost.
You think we should have won that game?
No, I disagree that we deserve to lose, though.
So what do you think, the draw?
Yeah. I disagree we deserve to lose.
I think Sporting Lisbon probably deserved to win that game, but that's by the by.
They scored in the last minute. I didn't think they did, but I don't think they deserved it. Anyway, but we didn't play. I wouldn't say we played well in that game. But anyway, these are the games we're talking about. These are going to be your toughest games of the season. It's obvious to me that we're going to struggle in these games more than other games because these are the toughest games. You're playing away at top 6 teams. These are the best teams in Europe and in the country. So obviously you're going to struggle in these games more than you are in other games, and that's why we're seeing these kind of struggles at the moment. And the fact of the matter is, no top 6 team has won away from home against a fellow top 6 team this season. So clearly all the top 6 teams are struggling away from home against their rivals at the moment.
But it's the manner of which we're playing in these games.
Yeah, but we've played. Yeah, I guess that I get that, and that's true. We've played more top 6 teams away from home than any other top 6 team so far. We've played 3.
You look at the back end of last season, how we beat Man City away with a brilliant performance, how we went to Anfield in a really important game for them when, the inevitability looked all set for a massive Liverpool victory with fans lining the streets. The atmosphere was electric at Anfield, and we went there and played a really good game. Like, why isn't that not being shown again this season? Where are those levels away to the Big 6?
Haven't found them yet.
And we need to find them. We need to find them because the games that we've played this season, look, I totally get they're the hardest games of the season. I totally get that it's very hard to win these games. But like I said before, it's the manner of the performances. It's the way we're turning up to these games and literally just folding over and not showing any signs that, we're in the game. And that's just the facts of the matter. And Conte pretty much throwing in the towel with 20 minutes to go in each of these games. It's just like, I'm not blaming Conte for it. I don't know who I'm blaming, to be honest, because I'm a bit muddled up with it all. But it's just not good enough from everyone involved, Conte and the team. Yeah, and there needs to be big improvements. But Conte's always said, this is going to take more time than we need. And let's be honest, that when you get to the level where you're winning big games of this manner, that's when you're like title challengers. That's when you're an elite team. We're just not there yet. As much as we're a good team, and I still stand by that. I think we're a good team. People are going to say everyone's rubbish and all this kind of stuff. I don't believe that. I don't believe everyone's bad and we have to rip it all up and start again. Everyone says after every defeat, you have to these are the worst players ever and blah blah blah. Look, I still think we're a good team, but that's what we are. We're a good team. We're not elite yet, and that's just reality at the moment. And we're not. Look, if people are expecting us to win the league this season, we were never going to do that. It was always about progression. It's always about getting closer to the top 2 than last season. I believe we can still do that this season, and as much as it's frustrating to see us struggle and play badly in these games, that's going to happen sometimes, especially in a massive get away at massive teams. And sometimes these results can happen. And I think it happened yesterday. I think it was a bad day at the office, no doubt about it. Poor performance from everyone and poor tactical performance as well. But hopefully we've got to learn from it and move on. And that's all we can do. Yeah. Absolutely. I kind of agree with everything you said there, but big game this weekend against Newcastle, against an on-form Newcastle. Yeah. I think they've won 3 on the bounce now.
And they're tough there because they always give the big teams a good game as well.
It's going to be a very tough game. So we need to pick ourselves off, dust ourselves off, put that in the background now and go at it again this weekend against a very, very good Newcastle side. Probably the best Newcastle side we've seen in a very long time. So we need to respond. We need to literally just dust ourselves off, show our big bollocks and go again, because we need to win this weekend. We need to respond with a victory. It's very, very important, and we need to carry on that really good home form that we're showing.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what we can rely on at the moment. That we're so good at home. Newcastle's not going to be easy whatsoever, but let's hope we can take the game to them, be a bit more positive, and maybe we can come away with 3 points. It'll be a massive 3 points if we can. Just before
we close, I just want to get your opinion maybe on the 3-5-2 formation, because we've seen it now at Old Trafford. We saw it at Brighton from the start. What's your opinions on it? Because, 2 displays. I mean, the first 20 minutes at Brighton looked good, but then it kind of didn't look that great after that. Yesterday it looked terrible, maybe because the individuals just didn't perform on the day. What's your opinions? Because Conte was saying that he maybe does prefer the 3-4-3.
As we were saying before the game, and we didn't believe him. And he played the 3-5-2, so maybe we had a right not to believe him. But I think maybe he was being honest in a way still. But even though he was intending to play 3-5-2, maybe he was still being honest about preferring the 3-4-3.
Yeah.
I think the 3-4-3 gives us more going forward. I've said that consistently. I think it gives us more options than just relying on Kane and Son to link up pretty much, or relying on the wing backs to win their individual battles. I feel like the 3-5-2 can definitely still work. It just relies more heavily on the centre mids to be more offensive, be more creative, and do more things on the ball. And I think in a lot of games they're going to be able to do that, like they were against Everton. They're coming up against players they can compete against and get the better of. But when you're coming up against world-class talent like Casemiro, and you're not able to get the better of him, all of a sudden it's a lot more easy to pen us in. And then all of a sudden in the 3-5-2, well, actually, it's a lot easier for teams, I feel like, to suffocate us in that formation than it would be in the 3-4-3 when there's always that threat of the three strikers. Whereas I feel like in the two, when we had the two, it was too easy to snuff Kane and Son out, I felt, in this game. But I don't think it's going to be like that for every game. I just feel like you've got to give Man United credit. They were brilliant. And we came up against a very good Man United side. And you have to be very good on the day, and we just weren't. And it was a mix. It was a mixture of tactically, we had to be perfect, and we weren't. And then the player quality as well on the day, they just weren't. They weren't up to it. So I don't think we could say, okay, 3-5-2 won't work. It didn't work in this game, but I think going forward it can still be a good formation for us. I think I want to see more from Basuma in this formation as well, because he played it safe a lot, and I thought defensively I didn't see enough of him either. But more importantly, when he got the ball, I want to see him play forward a lot. I want to see him take a bit more risk and actually try and find players in dangerous positions. And I think he needs to use his physicality more and taking people on and try and more charges up the pitch. Because at the moment, he's just playing it too safe. He's just playing it sideways, not really asking questions of the opposition. And if he's not doing that, it's going to be very difficult for us to ask too many questions overall, because it's too easy for the opposition to get into their shape if they're not getting asked questions of and getting space opened up.
All right, well, I guess that is your match review of the embarrassing display from Tottenham Hotspur. I think the players, the manager, everyone involved need to take accountability for the result and the performance yesterday. But we got to dust ourselves on. We got to move on. We've got a big game on the weekend against a very good Newcastle side, so we got to be fit, firing, and at it, and have the right mentality in the head to go and win that game on the weekend where we welcome Newcastle to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. But player ratings and 5 takeaways will be with you very soon. Thank you everyone for watching us today. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, come on you Spurs.